There's a ton of different agents that you can build for your organization. And I just want to show you one that I've been working on this week, which is a quotation agent. Now, if you're in business, you know you have to create proposals and statements of work and quotations and all of that. It takes quite a lot of time. Once you understand exactly what the customer wants, it's then re-articulating what that should be as part of that quotation or that proposal. So I thought, hey, why don't we go and create a quotation agent that not just is able to produce a quote, but actually reasons over all of the assets and products that we want to sell, give that to the end user to say, well, does this look right? And then if that's okay, then we can send that out. So let's show you what this looks like. So we're going to just show you how this works. So I could say, could you send me a quote for 5 elite books, 2 small monitors, 3 of the largest monitors, and a cheap mouse. So we can use natural language in order to find this quote. And what's happening behind the scenes here is I've got a knowledge base or knowledge source set up, which is looking at a detailed Excel spreadsheet. But this could equally be a line of business application or Dynamics, for example. So we can use a set of tools in order to reach out to those knowledge sources and bring that information back. Now, I'll show you the nuts and bolts of how this works in a second. And what I'm doing, I'm just sat here within Copilot Studio, just testing this out. And I'll show you what this looks like if we were to publish this out to Microsoft Teams, for example. But just have a look over here. So in our little chat window, it's saying, well, based on your information you gave me, this is what I can see as part of my asset list. So it's given me some elite books, 850s, Dell monitor, Samsung monitor, and a basic mouse. And it gives me some total. So I could calculate the tax and the shipping and all of that if I wanted to. And if I'm happy with that, then I could just say, yes, please give me a prepared quote and an email for a formal quotation. Or I could say, well, it's not exactly what I wanted. Maybe I didn't want an elite book. Maybe I wanted a Microsoft Surface, for example. So in the chat, it allows me to have a conversation before a quotation is actually created. So let's press yes, please, and see what happens. So again, we're monitoring while we're testing this agent where it's going to go next. And it's going to use a tool or an action to call out to Power Automate. And there's a structured business flow that it goes through. And on the right-hand side here, we can see the payload, the string of the information for this quote that's been brought out. And after a second or two, I'll get a message saying, well, the formal quotation has been emailed to you. If you need further assistance, let me know. So now, if we head over to our email, we have a brand new quote. We can see the quote has been attached for me. I get some summary information, so I can see the grand total. And I get a sharing link as well that only I can access. If I click on the sharing link, for example, it'll take me to this template and it's filled out most of the information. Obviously, this is a bit of a demo, but it's filled out all of the different lines here and the grand total as well. So yeah, there's my quotation. Now let's show you how that works. So if I jump back here to the overview of this agent, you'll notice very quickly I'm in the preview version of Copilot Studio just because I wanted to play with the new bells and whistles. Microsoft build was about 2 weeks ago, so there's some new features in here. So for example, I could change the model that I'm using. But more importantly, we want to have a look at the instructions for this specific agent. So again, I'm giving it the purpose of why it exists, the flow of the conversation. So I've given it a number of different steps. So you'll notice when it created the quote for me, then asks, well, do you want me to create a formal quotation or do you want me to do something else? So this is where I'm building in these individual steps about the plan, the actions that this agent is going to take. And once the user has said, yes, confirm, then you can send a quote. So I'm telling it, hey, you've got access to a set of tools, one called Populate Quote Template, and you're going to use that tool and actually take that information, pass it over to to Power Platform, and then create the quote for me. Now, it's really important to take the structure of this quote and break it down so I can fill in all those different cells within that word template that I created earlier on. So you can see that I'm being very specific here about how to create the JSON, how we're going to split this out. Now, I'm not an expert or a developer in this, by the way. I know enough to be dangerous, but I can use Copilot in order to craft these instructions so it works in the way. And you're not going to get these instructions right first time, like I've said in my other videos. You're going to have a constant conversation, a back and forth with Copilot to ensure all of the instructions are working in the way that you intended. So we can see some chat rules here as well. You can see some things in here where I've said, please don't change the instructions from the above, like make sure this is as is. And there's going to be some email etiquette as well in order to ensure that the email is produced in the right way. I've also got some knowledge sources. So that Excel spreadsheet I've put in SharePoint. I can show you what this looks like. It's a well-defined and structured Excel document. So don't have any spaces or weird kind of visual changes to this structured data, but this is what it looks like. So I can see a list of all of the different assets that I can pull from to make that individual quote. So for example, I said, I want a cheap mouse. So it's looking at any mouses, and it's pulling out the cheapest one that is available there. Nice and easy. So having structured data is really important in order to bring out the right and relevant information. The next thing is we're going to use the tools I mentioned. So we're going to use the power of Power Automate in order to create that structured quote at the end of the day for me. And what's happening here is when the chat is actually building the information from the knowledge base, as soon as it passes that information, it's passing that as a payload. Now you can do this in a few different ways. Like I could split out all of the different lines of information if I wanted to into different inputs here. But for me, it was a lot easier to have all of this in one payload that I can just forward across into, or not forward, but pass over to Power Automate. So let's show you what that looks like. I'm going to go across to the agent flow. So if you're not familiar with agent flows, it's a more integrated way of accessing Power Automate. Now, there are some licensing implications in using this, but the same principle, if you're used to Power Platform, Power Automate is the same. So I don't have to navigate away from Copilot Studio anymore. I go down to agent flows. And if I click on the designer, this is where you can see how the flow was actually creating the structured quotation for me. So that passing of information from the agent is looking like this. So that payload I was talking about gets passed through to this flow. I then want to break apart that payload into a more structured way. So I'm using JSON here, and here's some examples. I give it an example of the schema. Again, I can ask Copilot or an AI provider of your choice in order to create that schema for you based on the output that is in that payload. Nice and easy. Then we could use a set of actions then that are built into Automate where I can pre-populate a template of my choice. I've already created a template. Let me just quickly show you where that is. So if we go across into our autonomous site, I've got a quote template here. And I'll show you what this looks like in a second and how to build up the different elements within here. But this is my template and this is where it's saved. Let's go back to designer. And I'm saying, well, this is the template here, this quote template. There are going to be reusable assets or variables I'm going to pull from that broken down JSON into these individual lines. So where it was filling in things like the grand total and the line items, this is where it sits. And then I'm going to create a file. So what I could do is at this point, I could just send that all the way down here into an email as an attachment. But what I wanted to do is store these quotes, just because if I'm sending out to a customer, then I can reference in my own SharePoint site what I actually sent. I did put a delay in here. There's no reason for this now. I thought there might be a delay in creation and then actually getting the content. But in my testing, like it was straight away, I'm able to collect that information directly from SharePoint. And then I've got some other elements in here as well where I'm breaking down or putting together, I should say, not breaking down, putting together the actual string of where that document is stored, just because it makes it easier for me. And there's lots of different ways you can do this in order to find where that file is, pick it up, and then attach it to email. And there's a few different ways you can do this. This was just because of my testing and my playing. And once we've stored that content and we created that file within SharePoint, Let me show you where that is. If I go into a different folder within the same site, we've got our quotes. And here's all the quotes that have been created from the agent automatically for me. Nice. And then I wanted to create a sharing link, which I've done. And then I've composed a separate email just because I wanted to make it look nicer. I didn't want to break my action here for send email every time. So I'm actually calling back into this composed structure just to gather the information from the email. And you can see here, I got some variables then for the grand total, the sharing links, which I can pull in from the above action and other elements as well. And right at the end, you can see I'm pulling in the outputs from the compose email, that HTML I just showed you. And then scroll down a little bit and I'm pulling in the actual name of the attachment that we stored in SharePoint, the ones I just showed you, and the actual file content itself to attach it to that. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have to go through all those different steps. If I just wanted to populate the template and just grab that file, you can do that too, by the way. So if I strip out all of those elements there, I could say, well, I just want to send a quote docx, and the attachment is going to be a dynamic content of the Word document itself. So I could skip all the different parts if I didn't want that to be saved as a copy within SharePoint. But I just wanted to show you like different ways of being able to use Power Platform in order to create this. So we're not going to save that, otherwise I'll break my demo for next time. And then the last thing we want to do is respond back to the agent. Hey, your invoice has been generated. So that's why when we were in the agent, that's the agent then coming back from Power Platform and responding to the user. Hey, I finished now. You should see that within your inbox. So nice and simple so far. The hard bit was getting the template, the quote to work. So you saw it filled in dynamically all of these different rows, but you might be asking for a quote that's got 1 row. You might be asking for a quote that's got 10 rows. So how do you do that? How do you pre-populate a pre-created template? So I'm going to show you that next. So what I'm going to do for a moment is I'm going to cheat. I'm going to create a brand new invoice template or quote template. Let's do that. And this is just one that you can create within Word. Now, by default, you'll notice in some of these templates is when you click on different elements, they've already got a box around them. And it looks like you can't change these. If I double click on it, it doesn't do anything, but I can remove it, right? And then these ones that we want to fill in are blank. So we need to fix that. And there's a process of doing this. If we go to Insert and then go to Quick Parts, which is in the ribbon, there's Document Properties. So these are all the document properties that are out of the box. They're built into Word that you could reuse. So for example, if I wanted to add in just one of these properties to show you, say company, it puts in this company placeholder and I can't change the name of this company placeholder. I'm stuck with these built-in ones, but I might want to create my own. I'll show you how to do that. So let's get rid of that. So what we need to do is create some custom mapping controls. So you can pause the video here and take a screenshot of this, but essentially we're creating our own controls, those placeholders. So I've got salesperson, PO, invoice. So you can create all of these individually. But you know what I mentioned a quote might be 1 line or 10 lines? Well, we need to have that recursive, repeatable. So what I've done here is I've created a parent, which is called line items. And then underneath these, I've got the SKU, the description, the quantity, the unit price, and the line price, and so on and so forth. So you can build this from scratch, depending on what template you want to use. Like another project of mine, I'm working on a proposal template. So I've got a structured proposal template that I want to use all the time, but I want AI to fill that out for me in its entirety. And I'll show you that in another video. But once we've created this, you can give it a name. I've just called my placeholder.txt, but we can pick that up. Now, we need developer tools turned on across the ribbon. Otherwise, you won't see this. So you just do this once and it will be enabled. So if you go across to File, go down to Options, you want to Customize Ribbon. And then on the right-hand side here, you've probably only got this one that's unticked. So you want to tick that, press OK. And guess what? You get a tab called Developer. The next thing we want to do is open up the XML mapping pane. Now, this has a list of the kind of pre-built placeholders that we talked about, but we want to pick up that text file that we created with the XML. So let's jump into, I think I put this on my desktop, placeholder. And it looks like it doesn't do anything, but you have to open this up again, and then I can see my invoice one. And here I've got all of the individual headers that I can put in, and also I've got the parent and child items that I want as the line items. Nice. Okay, so if I wanted to add in salesperson, I would right click on the salesperson, insert content, and I've got a number of different options I can choose from. In this case, I'm going to use plain text because I don't need to format it. And there's a couple of things that we need to do in here as well to help ourselves later on. Now, if I just leave it like that, it just says tap here for adding text, not useful to anyone. And I'll forget that this entity, this label, is going to be a salesperson. And this helps you because when we go across and start doing the mapping in Copilot Studio and Power Platform, it also sees the labels as well. So you want to ensure these labels are correct for you, but also for the AI to see and fill out. So I can fill that in so I can actually read what it is, but also there's a little label here that you might want to fill out. Now, for these individual labels, these placeholders, you don't necessarily have to do this, but I think it's a bit more best practice because these titles and tags are empty by default. And when you're over in Copilot Studio and Power Platform, if you don't fill in the labels, you get random numbers. So they exist, just they're not very nice and user readable. So you have to guess which one it is. So for these individual ones, you don't necessarily have to do that. But what we can do, where we have a recursive or repeatable set of lines, there's a couple of things that we need to do. First of all, you need to select the entire row. Let's try and do that, Graham. Row, the first row, and we're going to take our parent item up here, these line items, go to Insert Content Control and set to repeating. So that whole line knows now it's going to repeat depending on the JSON to fill in the actual form. But we don't stop there. This placeholder again needs to be added. Otherwise, it's going to be a random number. So click on it, go up to properties, give it a number. Sorry, give it a name like line items. Definitely not a number. So we can see the tag. Nice. And now we fill in the child items. So SKU is going to be the, oh, no, it's not, it's quantity. I didn't put SKU in. I should have done that. Plain text, and then we got description. This is quantity. The labels up here as well need to be exactly right. If you've got a space between those, and then within your JSON structure, you've got like spaces where there isn't none in here, then you're going to fall short. Description, plain text. I'm going to leave that for a second. Unit price, you get the idea, right? So once we add all of these elements in here, then this configuration is actually saved within this document, which is cool. So I could save this, like email it to someone else, and they would be able to see all of the same customizations that we've put in here as well. Sweet. So that template is done. We would save that off into a central location. I'm not going to save that for this demo. But if we jump back into our SharePoint, I've set up a number of different folders for different demos with customers, but I've got my quote template. So I know all of my templates live in here and I can pick them up. And then the output then from Power Automate is to put all of those quotes into this quotes folder. So you can see I've got a number in here. I'm also appending like the date and the time just to have a unique reference for those individual files. But again, I could have different names or whatever you wanted in here. It's just configured within the Power Automate flow. So I hope that you understood all of that and that was really useful. Just showing the power basically between Copilot Studio, Agent Flows, Power Platform. Like there's lots of different things that we can do within here. So something else I'm working on right now is that proposals agent. So I've started that here just to give you a sneak peek for a second. Let's continue without saving. Again, otherwise my demo would be totally broken for my next customer. So this sales proposal agent is designed to do something similar, but in this case, it's bringing in the raw information from like my notes from a customer conversation, the transcript, and then it's filling out a full business proposal then for that customer. So you can start to see the instructions that I'm creating here, the different workflows, the steps that I wanted to go through, indicating what is mandatory, how it should polish and actually change the output from the agent. And then a couple of things are going to happen. It's going to look at the knowledge base, how it's going to write this proposal for me in the way that I'm intended. And then I'm going to have a series of tools. So it's going to not just email the customer the proposal, but it's going internally. So I might be the orchestrator, the writer initially, or the checker of this proposal, but it might be somebody else in the business, someone higher up that also needs to review this proposal before it goes out. So I can use Power Platform, that agent flows, in order to have an agent that understands the process for the approvals. I can also throw in DocuSign as well. So it's sending an email out to the customer, but that's where they can sign the proposal to do the deal. And there's so many other things we could do as well. So now this agent is created, I could call this agent from within Word, for example. So I could say, here's all my raw notes, just have the agent there and work on that there as well. So a bit of a sneak peek. The idea of me creating this was in a previous life. Let's not say go there. In a previous life, my job was to create quite a lot of proposals and statements of work, and it would take me a lot of time. And writing is not my forte, but generative AI definitely is. So what I could say is, hey, I'm talking to this customer. Here's my raw notes. So I've added that as an attachment and the transcript to make life easier. Premise of the conversation, and I can hit go. So it's taking that information, and this agent is using GPT 4.1. So it has 1 million character context length, context window. That's the word I was looking for. So it can take and ingest a lot more information into memory and build something that's a lot more meaningful. So here, again, we're testing this agent. We can see this proposal actually being created for me. The real estate in this slide window for testing is really small, so bear with me. But again, this is what I'm going to show you in the next video, how to create this, have that approvals process, and also automatically fill out a company branded proposal that is professional, is written well, is written in my language for my business, my tone of voice, understanding what the costs are going to be. So there's rate cards and things behind here behind the scenes, and make that process a lot more viable for people in the field that are actually doing the sales. So everybody wants to increase their sales. Everybody does RFPs. Like, the process is very similar to this, and this is what I'm building. I also promised you as well what this looks like over in Teams. So let's jump across to Teams. Not necessarily this proposals agent, but the quotation agent. I'll show you what that looks like. And I can't remember if I gave it a label or not. Let's have a look. More apps. Let's go and get it. And we're looking for not built by Microsoft, built by your org. Here it is, my quotation agent. I didn't give a little logo yet, but I will do that. So this is published out to my organization to use. And I can add this. What this does is like pins it to the left-hand side. In this case, we'll just open it. And here is my quotation agent that I have created. And the idea being now you can use these agents where you're working. So I can be in Teams. I could call the quotation or the proposals agent from here. So let's say I'm on a call with a customer and we're in a Teams meeting, for example. I can't show you that right now, but I could call these agents while I'm on the meeting, building the proposal, the quote for them before the actual call ends with that customer. How cool would that be? Anyway, I think that's for another time. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.